So hi Marjon, how
Hi,
are you?
Benjamin. Hi, Benjamin. I'm good. I'm really good, actually. I was just telling a client this morning that I was having a Zoom private session with how now that everything is slowly starting to open a bit in the world, or in our where we are, uh, that I feel a bit um, not sad, but kind of like I just started to land into my cocooning. And it
Hmm.
just started to feel comfortable, and it just started to bring me, insights that really made me excited and feel creative and but at the same time, excited about the fact that we can do a lot of work this way online, and that it really works. I mean, this client was going through a huge transformative moment this morning, and I was just so amazed together with her that we did this online. It was just wonderful.
And in many ways, I even think we're learning that a lot of this online work we're now doing can even be more efficient and even more thoughtful and, uh, you know, right in its intention because our ways to interact with one another are so limited that I think we get to the point of what it is we're doing a lot faster. And yeah, I agree. Like seeing things starting to open up again and having that uncertainty back now that we find a little bit of a rhythm, at least. Yeah, it's turbulent times.
Definitely,
Got to stay
definitely.
with it.
It is turbulent time, but the thing is, the turbulent times go through a lot of different phases, I feel like. So when, like, let's say 7, 8 weeks ago, depending on where you were in the world, because I had colleagues that were actually in China or in Japan or all over the world, that this whole COVID-19 started way earlier to have its effects on life than here in the Netherlands. So there was a sort of a tension leading up to it finally arriving here and then everything closing down. And you could kind of like look at how it happened in the other countries to kind of know what was going to be put in place here. So that was a certain turbulence that was really high, and then it kind of went down again. Then there was another turbulent phase of like, oh my God, we're going to start opening up, loosening up some of these rules again. And the fear that came with that, with regards to, oh my God, what about if a second wave comes? Aren't we going too fast? Are people really taking responsibility, not only for themselves, but also for the other? And with that society, so another turbulent wave. And then, like I just said, I started to more and more kind of become very comfortable in living this way, which is another kind of turbulence, I guess. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I think it's also a nice segue into, why we're doing this right now, why we're talking to each other, because I feel like one of the things that makes this moment feel like I've arrived at a place of rhythm
Mm-hmm.
is that we've started having our conversations again, right? And I think the reason we're here is because we've been talking to each other for how long? A year almost at this point about this project that we both feel so passionate about. And I think, we're sort of hitting, not to rephrase or reuse the term second wave, but we're hitting our second beginning in a lot of ways with everything that has brought us back together. And I think that's one of the few things that has really given me a sense of rhythm and normalcy in
Mm-hmm.
all of this and I think that's what a lot of us are finding right now. We're finding that we're communicating more intently with people, perhaps more regularly, and we're sort of finding different ways to reestablish our sense of normalcy. And
You
yeah,
know,
I'll keep coming back to the term rhythm.
absolutely. And also in listening to you, I just heard attentive listening.
Yeah.
And it brought me back to, okay, so about 1 year ago, we started to talk. You were in Cyprus, I was here. Um, One of the first conversations was so brilliantly exciting. Actually, it was not just the first, it was all the conversations that followed after that that just got more and more vibrant. with excitement, but we started talking about our respective tattoos. You having like this full circle, and I have this wave that is connected, that could also be pulled out into this full circle. And we both became very excited about creating some sort of a logo that had to do with the intuitivity into, what's that word, Benjamin?
Intuition.
Intuitively, right. Yeah, just you know, going into open conversations and coming up with all these creative ideas. But what I find really interesting about today is that you just said about a year ago I was in Cyprus when we started this conversation online, and realized that we had a lot a lot of connection in a way. Like we both had our own respective careers. We may not have seen each other for perhaps 20 years, but because of everything that we learned, all the different things that we've learned along the way, we came back here and met. And it was like this jolt of, like this explosion of energy, and going, oh my God, wouldn't it be great if we can work with the vehicle of Pilates in this case, and see where our colleagues are, where the people are in the world with their teaching, in the way of intuitively trusting that what they do is okay. I find it really beautiful that, you know, this circle is coming around and around, and I have a feeling now it's becoming a river.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's why both our tattoos match so well together. And we're coming here to see how can we, instead of physically being in a space, which is what we were supposed to do last week in Cologne, how can we still provide work or exchanges or exploration with those that would be interested in discovering this intuitive teaching concept.
Yeah, I feel like because we're sort of at this new mark of re-entering this work that we've done over this last year, and you know, just to state the perhaps obvious to us, but you know, we didn't come together to create a workshop necessarily. We just wanted to connect and catch up with one another. And as you said, long before short, we realized that even though our lives have taken on these very different paths, we had so much common ground in the way that we interact with our lives, with our work. It happens to be Pilates, where there's the biggest amount of overlap. We also unpacked a lot of our other histories where we saw that we approach things in a very intuitive way and in a very similar way to one another. And that's really where the idea for the workshop came about. And I, you know, this sort of being a new beginning, I want to kind of take us back to that moment for a second and really talk about, you know, where did this idea come from? What is this idea, and what did we find in these many hours, all of which we should have recorded, but we're doing it now.
Oh God, yeah.
But I think we really realized that our shared yet not, let me rephrase this, our parallel experience, even though we didn't always share them in real time because our lives were going different ways, but the parallel nature of what we both experience when we work, when we interact with our work, I think is really what inspired us the most. And we felt really strongly how beautiful would it be if we could share that with others and help us sort of reframe these ideas around. I think one of the first questions we asked was, who are we in our work? Who are we as teachers? How do we bring ourselves into an environment where we take the lead, where we guide others? How can we take care of ourselves within that? There were just so many amazing ideas.
Remember, what makes you tick? And that's like, yes, that's almost like a life calling. It's a huge question, but it's so like, even just hearing myself say it back to you, what makes you tick? Like what in your life, in your work, in your being makes you tick? And when you connect to that tick, how amazing would it be if you can then, in connection with your clients, become partners and let the work actually happen, rather than, as you were just saying, we're coming in as leaders and we're guiding our clients or students, which is absolutely true. But I think one of the things that we both became very, very excited about was that moment where magic happens, where all of a sudden you do something that is in no script, in no book, in no course, in no education, in no comprehensive. It is something that you do because it feels like that's what you need to be doing in that moment with your students. And your students is almost inviting you to do it without even saying it. And then when you do it, and you both are open, your student and you, I really do believe, and I have experienced, that something very magical is happening. And it just becomes this river, this flow of exchange, and trust is being built so greatly that you can almost go anywhere with your students. And this you cannot learn in a book. And this you cannot, I'm reminded right now, Benjamin, one of the moments where we got really, really into the subject was the fear of really, or insecurity of really daring to be yourself. But that means you first have to know who that self is. And unfortunately, we have seen that that some people are trying to copy, somebody else, like maybe their guru or their example or their mentor, or the person that they look up to, or and I'm not saying that that's wrong, but I think we both discovered that then very quickly you become tired, you become creativeless, you stop being inventive, you stop listening to your intuition, and it becomes a kind of a dull job, and that's one of the things maybe we can also talk about a little bit, because I think that's where you and I really connected, in the sense of remaining completely respectful for everyone that went ahead of us, all the pioneers, all the people that invented this gorgeous vehicle called Pilates, after Joseph Pilates. But that who are all these people? Who are we now? We're the next generation. What's going to happen with this? This is going to continue to evolve.
Yeah.
I'll give it back to you for a moment, because I'm
yeah.
Not,
No, I feel 100%. I think what really got us so excited about this was the opportunity to unpack, this concept of intuition, and why we feel so excited, elated when we get to work from that place of being really clear about who we are, how we interact with the person that's in front of us. And I think we both realize that that's not something that we learned in Pilates particularly, right? It's you kind of have to bring all of your life experiences into the way that you interact with your work. And that's not necessarily something that teacher training is set out to do, even though both you and I had amazing teachers without whom, you were one of my teachers, without whom we couldn't be doing what we do. But the thing that makes us, I want to say successful, but what I really mean is integrated, right?
ooh, nice.
Integrated with how we bring ourselves to this work, so that we don't get bored by it, so that we don't feel uninspired by it, so that we don't feel like we need to reinvent the wheel on a daily basis. We can just enter a situation and function and take charge. And that leads me to the second thing that I really took away from all of our conversations, but what I'm also hearing and what you just said is this idea that it's not just about hoping for the stars to align where that magic happens. It is actually something that you can create. And once you understand how to create that moment for the stars to align, so to speak, it becomes a skill. And I think that's what we really tried to unpack over this last year. How did that happen for us? Where did we learn that? And how can we harness that so that we can share it with others? And you know, it's not an A to Z approach from like, do these three things and you'll be fine. But we did point out all these different elements of what makes your teaching feel more integrated, and for you to feel more confident as well as nurtured in
Yeah,
your teaching, so that you don't burn yourself out, and
that
all
is
of those things.
exactly. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but the nurturance part there is crucial to me. Like, if I don't feel nurtured myself, you know, and that means it's really a give and take. It's really a traffic that circulates between you and your client or your group or your colleagues, which is a segue that we need to go to in a second. But really what I wanted to say also in light of what you were just sharing was one of the things you said that made me really, that really reminded me of why I love also so much this work, is that I believe you and I both agreed that we never actually prepare for our classes. And because too often than not, if you do prepare for your classes and you step into a workshop or a class, most of the time you don't do any of what you've prepared because of what the client comes in with, or the students. We always have this little thing, do we call it client or students? So let's say the person, whatever, it all is possible. But so, because if you really, really prepare and you oblige yourself to follow that little A4 of preparation of a session that you're going to do with your client, it means you're not actually holding space for your client. To me, that's what it means to me. It means you're not listening to what your client is coming in with. It means you're not giving yourself the freedom to completely step away from what you thought was going to be the right thing to do that day. And it might sound simple, but unfortunately, I've seen a lot of people stopping to really be present and in the moment, and daring to step away from what was maybe in the morning what you thought was going to be the right thing to do. And I remember us talking about that a lot as well. And yeah, and we talked about colleagues and a studio
Yeah.
down the road. Can we talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, I just want to add one more thing to
Here we go again,
the
Benjamin. This always happens to us.
I know. Round and around we go. um I feel like there, and this is something we talked about a lot too, the idea of preparedness, right, is not to be confused with having a plan, right? Because both you and I, we work off of the, you know, what people call the classical Pilates system or framework. And one could say, well, that's a way to be prepared, but it, you know, often gets confused with, oh, we have to stick to this order or else the whole thing is going to fall apart. And there's this beautiful gray zone. And I actually don't like the word gray zone. I think it should have all the colors. There's this beautiful rainbow of possibilities to work from a framework that is sound, that has logic, that works on its own. But the question that it always is, and especially in times like these where we don't get to physically always be with our people, what do we bring to that framework as teachers, right? And I think that's where that next level comes in, of understanding that the framework is not your preparation, and it's not the thing that should stand in the middle, teacher and student or teacher and client. The thing in the middle is the trust that you build, the communication that goes both directions. And yes, that also transcends to how we work with each other as colleagues and peers in the work. But I think one of the things that inspired me the most about our conversations. I mean, there are many, but I think this very clear understanding of there's a difference between following a method and bringing life to it. You know, and I think that's where we both feel, I think I can speak for you here too, I think that's when we feel the most integrated, when we're not just coloring within the lines, but we actually get to make art with the framework that we're given and that we believe in for various reasons, but we get to bring life to it so that it becomes full of life for somebody else.
You know, I think that is just beautiful the way you just framed that, because we are both artists, you know, in our heart. I think that's how we perhaps both started our careers as dancers. And it just brings me, and I know we haven't done this one yet, but it brings me to the so-called art of contrology. And, you know, this particular way of describing the method of Pilates, classically as we approach it, for the first time in over 25 years that I've been practicing this method and teaching it, it was so clear that it is an art. You know, I know that. I'm not saying that I didn't know that, but the way you just described that, because what it brings to me is all those colors of the rainbow that you were saying. Because art to me is colorful and playful and joyful. And if you had the word contrology alone, I feel resistance inside myself, because it talks about, for me, this is an entirely my own personal feeling. It talks about control, to control something, like we have to control COVID-19. It just doesn't resonate with me, because some things are uncontrollable. However, I believe that, let's go back to Pilates, you know, if we approached it from an artful perspective, with color and joy and intuition and creativity and attentive listening and holding space for the other as well as for yourself, being supportive for your colleagues, rather than, oh my God, there's a studio down the road, I have to be unfriendly to those people because it's competition. Rather, instead, you know, to embrace them and welcome them in your community, because together we are strong. And I don't know, I mean, how does that link back to art? I think everything done with your soul and from a place of rootedness, from a place that it's authentic. We talked a lot about authenticity. Integrate it. I think those stars will align whether or not you want to, whether or not you're set out to do so. It is just what's going to happen. So, sorry, I kind of veered away, but it was very inspiring to listen to what you were just saying, and it just brought me to art of contrology and it being an artist, an art, what we're doing.
Yeah, I don't think you veered away at all, or if so, I'll bring us right back, because what I'm hearing is something that really, I think, speaks to me as a teacher and as an educator, as a presenter, you know, whatever hat I wear when it comes to, you know, Pilates or anything else. I think if it wasn't Pilates, it would be something else that I would want to teach or share. But you know, this brings me again full circle with meeting you 20 something years ago, right, as a student. And you were one of the few teachers that I vividly remember, I think have really inspired me to move into life with the desire to inspire others. That was really born from, not necessarily from what you taught me, but from the way that you made me feel. And I think part of that, and this is something you and I have talked about a lot, because we share this beautiful lineage of having studied and being friends with Lyn Simonson, who we both look up to. But like her, you were never a person that made me look up to you. So that brings me back to what you just said about seeing eye to eye with one another and being an active collaborator in your learning. And that transcends all the way into how we should also look at those around us who do the same thing that we do, because it shouldn't be hierarchical of, oh, so and so has a bigger studio than me, has 3 more reformers than me, or teaches 3 more classes per week, or has 20 more clients than I have. I think those things sell us short of understanding that if we're invested in somebody else's success and see eye to eye with them, we actually get to lift each other up. We can build mentorships with one another where one isn't the guru and one is the learner. We're all on the same level. And I think what Lyn really imparted on both of us, I know it's something that you and many teachers that I've gravitated to over the years, are the ones that make me feel like I'm on their level. Yes, I'm the one learning, but that doesn't mean that I'm any less important, or that my current place and where I am in my learning is invalid because I don't know things yet.
Yeah.
And I think that's such an important aspect of, what we're talking about as far as our workshop goes, with trust building. And we keep coming back to this idea of attentive listening. You can't actually listen to someone if you talk over them. And that goes into how we talk to our students, clients, people, and how we talk to our people, the ones that are in this with us. And I've always been a firm believer that the best kind of competition is the one that allows you to turn it into an energy that allows you to be successful as well as others. I hope we all make it, that kind of attitude.
Thank you. Yeah, and that is entirely true for me still today. That I gravitate to those people that I want to learn from, because I'm happy enough to be able to say that I still want to learn, or am learning. There's not really a choice in there. It's just what is happening. And then I gravitate to those people that really look eye to eye and make me feel safe. And we talked about that a lot. And thank you for sharing that. Indeed, Lyn Simonson was introduced to me as a name first, and in an environment that was academy conservatory, very strict, beautiful base work, for my career. But when a name like that would come in, and I was studying jazz dance and music and all that, I was thinking I was going to meet some sort of a guru that I had to kind of go to my knees for and bow my head and actually not even look at, because that would have been maybe disrespectful. I don't know. I mean, I was brought up Catholic, so I don't know if that has anything to do with it. But for me, it was like, oh my God, who is coming at me? That's how it felt. The woman enters the room, and I'm struck by her resemblance of my aunt, who also is a big inspiration in my life, who was in the World War resistance. And I just could not look at her, because I had to figure out if I was right. Anyway, so I'm looking at her, and before I knew it, she walks straight at me and she goes, "Hi, I'm Lyn. What's your name?" And I'm like, oh my God, she's talking to me. And all of a sudden, actually, all that whatever was created by myself into my little soul and heart fell away. It melted, because she was very grounded. She was very rooted. Her heart was open. I could see insecurity also. I could see vulnerability also. I felt a lot of warmth, and it was just lovely. I saw just another human being. And and then, that's how she taught, and that's how she was, and that's how a lot of her teachers were. And I think that's also one of the starts of our conversation. But for me, I always aspired, and I didn't have to aspire much, because for me there was no other way than to be that way. you know. And if I can be that way, I don't get tired from teaching a long day of 7 hours. In fact, it just energizes me and it nurtures me, like you were talking about before. But I think what we really talked about also there is, we know this theoretically. A lot of our people know this. A lot of the people in our community know this. And whether, but our question then was, but do we really know this? Have we continued to respect ourselves that way and really be rooted? And are we aware? Do we do something in the morning, like a ritual, in order to open up energetically to have that continuous exchange? Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
anyway, sorry, just to go back. Yes, that's indeed also what really inspired me, and thank you for sharing that, because that's a huge compliment, Benjamin. Huge. And I can only hope that that's how the people that I work with today would still feel. You know, that's just beautiful. Right.
Sure, they do. Yeah, I think the big takeaway there is this, you know, again, you talked about your first experience of meeting her as your teacher, and this immediate feeling of being safe,
Mm-hmm.
of being worthy, of being invited into the experience.
That's
And
so big, being
you know,
invited.
you could call it disarming, you could call it many different things, but I think for us it's an opening into the idea of really being present with the
Yeah.
person that you're with, and that taking leadership, being authoritative and assertive as a teacher, as Lyn was, as you are, as I am, doesn't necessarily mean that you have to shut the doors. Both can coexist, and I think that's what makes us tick, right? This idea of like, I know what I'm doing, even though I don't know what's going to happen. And that takes us back to this idea of preparedness, but it's a preparedness that's different from, oh, I'm going to teach these 5 exercises today, but it's and
Can I
again,
challenge
and
you on that?
yeah, please.
Can I?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I should stop saying sorry. I have to challenge you on that, because although I agree with you, I, and I think we have talked about this, often also don't know what I'm doing when I go into something, into an experience. And that's what we talked about too. Then to anyway go, even if you're not sure, and trust that the sum of all of your experiences will come at the crucial moments to you.
100%.
That's where your intuition
Yeah.
comes in, and you just kind of know.
And I think that's, in my mind, what intuition is. It's the subconsciously knowing what it is you're doing. You can't explain it, you can't write it on paper, you can't easily teach it to someone, but that self-trust of going into a situation that is, you know, unprecedented, a new condition that you now have to work with, a limitation, a client who shows up 35 minutes late and you only have 20 minutes left, but you still want to make it something. We enter into these situations and we can still have a sense of calm if we know that what's going to come out of me is going to come from the right place, and I can go into it without the fear of failing, you know, without having this dance with the right or wrong that we also talked about a lot.
Oh yeah, that's
So I think we're talking about the same thing, but I'm glad you challenged me on it. Because that's how we get to more clarity.
Well, also, and this is where I just caught myself just now, just in this moment, not when I challenged you, not in that moment, but in this moment. My brain just kind of went over here, and it went, but you know, it might be a question that one of the interested people into this workshop would have, like how do you know? How do you know that what you're set out to do is the right thing to do? How do you know that you know what you're doing? Oh my God. You don't know, right?
Yeah.
You just have to trust it. And this reframing the concept of right and wrong is, I think we took 3 sessions of talking about that, Benjamin.
Probably
reframing the
more.
concept of right and wrong, because we shared, I think, in this moment, your journeys around the world as a facilitator for workshops and, you know, a guide and a presenter. And you've really, really started traveling the world doing that, meeting all these different communities of Pilates instructors or practitioners, which, by the way, for those of you who are listening to this, Benjamin and I also believe that this workshop, right now we're using the vehicle of Pilates because we happen to have a lot of overlap there together, but we believe that this work can be done also in dance or in offices with managers. Or good, we'll park that. Back to the fact that you're going around the world. And I think you shared at some point, you know, it's so disheartening and almost sad to see how many instructors think that if they step away from the scripts, that they do something wrong and that they no longer belong, which is excruciatingly devastating to their existence almost. And that's something we really talked about a lot, because there is no right and wrong, right?
Correct. And there's no finish line in what there is to learn. And I think what often gets confused is that we can acknowledge that we are lifelong learners and we continue to grow. But at the same time, and I think this happens for a lot of people, if we acknowledge that we're going to continuously learn and that tomorrow I'll be better than today and the day after that I'll be better than today, it can put some people into this place of thinking, oh, then I'm not great today. Right? If I compare myself to everything that I have yet to learn. And I think it gets in the way of opening those doors that we talked about earlier. And I think that's one of the places where we really felt we got to do something, because we've never experienced that as much of a problem, right? And to sort of bringing it back to this idea of not knowing what we're doing and yet doing it. I think the other idea that often comes up is the idea of being an imposter, right? The imposter syndrome that everybody keeps talking about. I don't know what to do. I should be knowing what to do. And my response to that always is, well, who are you to know all the answers?
You know,
right?
I'm so grateful for, sorry, are you?
Oh, go for it.
It's because something else, we're like bouncing balls, people, if you're listening to this. This always happens. This is what's so great. And we just wanted to do this so we could share it with you. In listening to you, I'm completely like, it feels exciting almost. There's like this vibration inside my body going, oh my God, yes, 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 yes. All I can hear is yes. That's true. Not that all the other stuff is not true. There we go again. You know, it can be both. But it brought me to COVID-19 right now, and all of our respective communities of teachers being forced to go and work online. Some of them maybe didn't, which is also okay. But what I saw happening around me was a lot of discussion on what was the proper way of doing this. And again, resistance came inside my body, because I think that every individual person will know with their own individual clients or people or students what is the right way to do it. You know, because I think what the person on the other side of the screen is looking for is you, not the hundreds or the roll up or the single leg circles. Yes, perhaps because they may not have used their memory and they may not know exactly the routine, so you can coach them through. So you are a coach there, great, but they're looking for you. And you cannot copy that from some other what you think is successful. That's a thing another thing I think you and I are interested to explore together with everyone that's interested in this workshop is what makes you, like what makes your clients come to you? Why is that? Is that because you're authentic? Is that because why? What would, you know, not to compare with the others, but it's just to understand that the people come for you and not just for the hundreds, if that makes sense. And, you know, to go back a bit into our intention with this workshop, if you go on our website, intuitiveteachingworkshop.com, you'll see 4 main themes that we are willing to explore. There is about 100 themes that we came up with in this over the course of the year, but we kind of tried to put them all in a little box, which we don't like doing because we don't like putting things in boxes, but we did for now, just so you can have a visual as per what these 4 different themes are. We call them themes that we'd like to explore with each other, because this workshop is not a technical Pilates workshop. We may invite you to think of a certain routine and a certain level of a certain apparatus, but we may also not. Again, we're going to prepare, we are going to have a plan, but we also want to remain open intuitively to what comes, right, Benjamin?
Absolutely. I think it's about building that inner compass, if you want to use that as an analogy for the concept of intuition. I think it's that getting familiar with what essentially makes you you. First of all, understanding what that is, because like you said, Marjon, like people don't necessarily just come because you're a great Pilates teacher. They come because of the way you make them feel. How do you make them feel? I would argue that maybe a lot of us don't even know that, because we maybe have never asked. And
Voila.
this might be as good a time as any to ask those questions of one another in a safe place with people that we trust around us, to really harness what makes those that I come in contact with gravitate towards me. And I would say that for most of us, it's not because we're the closest Pilates studio to their home or because we cue better than somebody else. There's something else. And building that inner compass of understanding, oh, this is what other people see in me. That doesn't necessarily mean that we have to adhere to that. But I think it's really helpful in helping us understand this is what people get from me, in addition to learning about Pilates, in addition to feeling better in their bodies through movement, in addition to finally understanding, you know, the sequence or knowing how to keep themselves safe, etc. There's something else. And I think as professionals who rely on that kind of exchange with our students, clients, people, I think it really serves us to build that compass so that we can trust it, which requires a lot of practice, which requires a lot of digging deep. And I think, yeah, those are all the things that we we will explore in this workshop.
I'd like to link in on the digging deep part, Benjamin. Thank you so much. You see, that's another thing with Benjamin and myself in this relationship that we started to ignite, I want to say fire in almost, because that's what I feel right now since about a year ago, is that we'll touch upon a subject and Benjamin is very articulate in the way of linking what he hears and then bringing it back so it starts to circulate, you know? And it starts to become this circle, you know, that is on your arm tattooed, Benjamin. And for me, it's this river. So it's really great. There's great movement there. But why am I saying this? I was going to come into, you were saying, what were you saying that I said I wanted to?
I was talking about the compass. I was talking about
diving in deep.
Diving in deep. There we go.
Right. Thank you. Diving in deep is also something that we believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Benjamin, that we believe is something that you must be willing and curious about. It can't happen forcefully, you know. it will either happen or it will not. My experience, to go back to Lyn Simonson and several other gorgeous, brilliant, wonderful guides on my path, I gravitated towards them because I knew that if I wanted to grow as a professional, and not even, I think I wanted to always grow as a human being first before the professional. If I wanted to grow, I knew I needed to go to a place that I felt scared to go to by myself. And these people that I felt gravitated towards, I'm sure also felt gravitated to me in the sense of wanting to go there with me, or seeing that that's where I wanted to go and knowing intuitively how to guide me there. And I will tell you, let me tell you, lots of tears have fallen out of my eyes. Lots of sweat drips have come out of my pores. Lots of fear and scaredness and anger and frustration and all of it. But I was so trusting the other person would hold me that for me to go through all these little breakthroughs, because I think it will be there for the rest of your life, I wanted to be in their proximity because I knew that they could help me. And eventually, you know, it can only be seen, I guess, as a great gift if that's something that I can be for someone else. You know, and I think for the first time in a whole year, Benjamin, I know the answer to your question, what makes you tick? Thank you.
So what's yours?
I think I just said it.
All right.
If I can feel gravitated towards someone who feels gravitated to me, who wants to go into a process with me of joy, of fear, of sacredness, of scarcity, hey, there we have that rainbow again, and the art of everything that we do. If I can become, you know, that partner for someone, then that's a great honor. I mean, you know, and I don't think that I will ever be able to impose myself upon someone and say, I'm going to be that for you. This is not for me. That doesn't work. It doesn't feel like that. See, I go like this. It would be wrong almost for me. And yeah, and I think that that's the magic, that if you feel, you know, someone reaching out like that, even if that person is not using so many words to express it, but if you feel the opening as a teacher or as a guide or as a whatever you want to call yourself, instructor, therapist, I don't know. If you feel that there's the openness, then you can only go with it, you know, and move along with it and see and see where that goes without, and that's another really important thing, without putting the pressure upon yourself. I say this for me mostly, hopefully it resonates, that you're going to achieve something great, because that's looking at tomorrow. I think what's important is what's there to be moved now.
Yeah. And I think that goes right back to the idea of willingness to dig deep. And, you know, I think anyone who's ever taught anyone anything knows nothing really is teachable unless the learner receives it. Yeah, I can tell somebody how to do a corkscrew a million times, but if they're not actually willing to unlock it in their own body, they're not learning anything. And I feel like the same is true in how we feel like we've learned everything from our teachers, but not just in Pilates or dance, in everything we've ever learned. If we shut our ears, we're not learning. If we're not embodying what it is we're given, there's no learning happening. I think that's the excitation of it, because once the willingness is there, it's not even about teaching anymore. It's just about vibing.
Well, and there you go, because learning and then learning goes both ways. I can only hope that those guides on our paths learned as much from us as we from them. You know?
100%.
I mean, that's where we level and we become one, I think, and we integrate together. And I think that's all of that exploration we're doing now in this conversation is what we're trying to establish in this 2.5-day workshop, right? And now we're trying to explore how can we start perhaps something online, right?
Yeah. Well, I think what we've learned in all the hours, and I think if anybody's listening to this, you can understand how it turns into hours very easily. All the hours that we've been talking to each other, we realize that what we're willing to bring to this workshop is not necessarily so much about Pilates even, right? That's maybe the hook and the common denominator that we have with the community we want to serve. But what it's about is really this idea of going into, I lost my train of thought for a second, but it's not about the technicalities. It's about unlocking skill and trust and confidence by way of asking yourself the right questions. The way I lost my train of thought is because I heard this quote the other day and I thought it was such a beautiful one, and I'm probably butchering it right now, but it was something along the lines of, we live in a world that is based on the questions we have. And it's this idea of a coaching framework, really, where we're not just teaching as in like, I know this and I'm going to give it to you and now you know it, but it's about going on a journey together to help others find the answers to the problems they have. And I think that's a very different style of teaching, but I think it's the one that makes us tick, and I think it's the one that we found is the most rewarding and goes two ways and is the most successful as a result. And that's what this is about. And because that's what it's about, there's such a great opportunity for us to look at the intuitive teaching workshop not just as a live event confined into a Pilates studio, but we have really big ideas for it. And it's a coaching platform in many ways. And we could come up with different ideas on how to name it, but it's really about people coming together with the willingness to dig deep, with the willingness to integrate the pieces that make them up, to then go to their next level as a teacher, as a human being, really, as a friend, as a colleague. But I suppose mostly as a guide. Please, yeah.
Sorry.
No. Go ahead.
It is really to reach out and build community that way, right? Is also what you're saying. So we feel, a strength. Words are hard because if I say strength and power and all that, that's not, I think, what you and I both are seeking. But we are trying to embrace each other, ourselves, so that we're not so alone. And this is not because that could be perhaps a desire that I have. And in fact, in all honesty, it would be great to be part of a lovely community like that. But one of the discussions we had too is how everyone starts to live on their own little isolated island because of perhaps either in superiority or inferiority or insecurity, or just having just really no time, you know? So also that was another aspect we wanted to talk about. How do you economize your time so that there's enough time to actually connect together? But I just wanted to add, Benjamin, to what you were saying, is that the original idea is that we would have 3 days in 3 moments in a workshop day of actual physical work. With the vehicle of Pilates. So we would touch upon a certain theme from those 14 themes on our website, and then work around, you know, a certain sequence from the Pilates methods, and integrate, you know, that particular work we did or exploration we did on that particular theme. So I just want to clarify that to people, that it's not a 2.5-day just cognitive experience.
Absolutely. Body, mind, spirit, baby.
Right. And now we're going to try to figure out what we can do in the interim online.
We will. But I feel like that might be a conversation for another day, because I'm looking at the clock and
Absolutely.
I don't know how it always happens, but we already talked for an hour. And I could talk for 5 more. But this was, I always feel so inspired talking to you, exploring with you, and I'm glad we hit record on this, because I'm excited to share this and see how it inspires others, if they feel invited to this community of two, because yeah, like you said, Marjon, we're continuing, we're not going anywhere. In fact, I think all this introspection that happens now brings us deeper into why this is important, and now is as good as time as any to go deep.
Absolutely. And so if you're watching this, if you have watched until now, we also would like to invite you to please share this with as many people as you can, if you feel that you know people that could really benefit from this type of exploration. We are still here for you. We're working on what the next steps are. Again, our website is intuitiveteachingworkshop.com. Did I say it right, Benjamin?
You did.
And we'll post it underneath this link as well. So anyway, thank you so much for being with us. Thank you so much, Benjamin.
Thank you.
For your time in lovely Cyprus. Please take good care of yourselves, everyone, and of each other. And we will be back with you very soon. All right. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.